Right, now let's get on to the AFC. And I believe we're starting with the NFC East. Am I correct?
So yes.
Sir.
I am. Lovely. Right. There we go. Okay, and we're starting
America's team.
America's team. Then Dallas Cowboys, as Stephen A would say. So, they've re-signed quarterback Cooper Rush on a 2-year, $6 million deal. I know Skip Bayless will be smiling. He loves that man. He wants him to start over Dak Prescott, which I cannot get behind. Tony Pollard has received a franchise tag and will become the Cowboys' new starting running back after Ezekiel Elliott has been released. Brandon Cooks has been acquired in a trade for a 2023 5th-round pick and a 2024 6th-round pick. Leighton Van Der Esch has been re-signed on a 2-year, $11 million deal. Again, like I said earlier, that is the linebacker deal. Stephon Gilmore, 2019 Defensive Player of the Year, acquired in a trade for a 5th-round compensatory pick from the Colts. And safety Donovan Wilson is re-signing on a 3-year, $24 million deal, with the first 2 years fully guaranteed. I really like this class of the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys, they never really do much in free agency. For a team, for like America's team, it's usually trades they do. They don't free agency. It's not a big free agency destination. I don't know why. Jerry Jones, he kind of just likes his trades, but this is a really, really good. The Cowboys, they always have a solid roster. Whether they're, I think the media always gets them. They're always going to have that attention, and I think that they don't always play up to their expectations. But they always have a really solid roster, and I think there's smart team building here. I think we don't always credit the Cowboys for that, but giving Tony Pollard the franchise tag and letting Zeke go, even though Zeke is more of the star, even though he's not a better player, that's usually who the Cowboys keep around. Whereas they've gotten rid of Zeke, they've done the football move, and they've kept Tony Pollard in town.
Yeah, I definitely think it's been a decent first week of free agency for them. I personally hate giving the Cowboys credit on anything, but I think letting go of Zeke was ultimately the right decision.
Yeah.
He just hasn't been the same Zeke that we saw in, I believe, 2016 was his real breakout year, and he's just fallen off ever since then. I think the Leighton Van Der Esch re-signing, key piece of their defense. He missed a few games. I believe he missed the last 3 games last season, and they felt that. Their defense felt that. He's going to come back. Injuries will always be a concern, but him coming back is going to be really solid. I think Donovan Wilson, their safety, very solid signing. They've got him on a 3-year contract. He's been able to re-sign. And I think we really need to look at that, their trio on defense, with Malik Hooker, obviously, Wilson and Kearse. I think they're one of the best safety trios in the NFL. I think Trayvon Diggs, obviously a solid cornerback. Obviously, there are the jokes about how he will occasionally get burned, never has interceptions. But let's be honest, besides, you have to be a really solid cornerback for people to be celebrating you getting burned,
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think, like always, the Dallas Cowboys come in with a solid team. Free week of free agency, they've still got a very solid team. But let's be real, in my personal opinion, they're just not going to perform like everyone expects them to. I think maybe this year will be different. Maybe if Dak Prescott can show up. I think it was the 2020 or 2021 season when he got injured. Prior to that, he was on pace to break almost every quarterback record. Yards, touchdowns, everything like that. Obviously, he got injured and he hasn't been the same since. If he can get to that level, I think the Cowboys, like always, will enter the year as contenders. Whether they'll make the playoffs is a different animal entirely. Whether they go far in the playoffs is a different beast entirely. But I think this has been a decent first week for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the addition of Stephon Gilmore. He's more of that kind of corner that's just he's calm. He's kind of the opposite of Trayvon Diggs. Trayvon Diggs, he's kind of I think he's really blossomed. Especially last year, I think 2 years ago, I was kind of more of he is kind of the Jameis Winston of corners, whereas he gives up big plays, then he gets an interception, and Jameis Winston's the opposite, where he makes a big play and then throws an interception. But of course, I think last year, he started to be, he's more and more, and like you said, if people are celebrating you on Twitter being burned, it means that you're a top cornerback in this league. And Stephon Gilmore, he is a bit older, he doesn't have that speed. He's not the defensive player of the year anymore that he was in 2019. But he's still a really solid corner, and to get him for a 5th-round pick is
a steal.
It's a steal, yeah. I know the Colts, they kind of just need to give him away, and the Cowboys can just be like, look, take this pick, because because the Colts can't pay that money. Right, should we move on to the New York Giants?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Right, well, there's a lot to talk about the Giants as well. And we'll start with Daniel Jones. I want both of your thoughts on this deal. 4 years, 160 million. It's interesting.
It's a really, really big deal. 160 million, 82 million guaranteed, and 35 million in incentives, according to sources of the ESPN. Now, I've personally always liked Daniel Jones. I think last year he had a decent year. I think, they made it to the playoffs. Obviously, they didn't go far, but, they lost to the Eagles, who went on to go all the way to the Super Bowl. So it's not a bad team to lose it to. So I think him, and obviously, I'm sure we'll talk about it, Darren Waller, and obviously Saquon Barkley are going to form a really good trio. And I think they're gonna do quite well this year. And I personally think, I don't want to jump the gun, but I think they're the best team in the NFC East, besides the Eagles. Obviously, the Eagles made it to the Super Bowl, but I think the Giants are comfortably second.
Okay.
I'm really not sure how I'm feeling about this. This is a huge deal to offer Daniel Jones. I feel like they've put a lot of faith. The franchise are putting a lot of faith in him. I feel like he's now solidified as their franchise player. I just want to see how he performs. I don't really want to say too much on it. I just think a 4-year, $160 million contract is. It's always gonna be like skepticism behind the decision, especially when there are QBs in the league who are better and who are paid less or who have a smaller contract. So I feel like he's got a lot to prove. He has a lot to prove. He's been given the opportunity. I want to see how he executes.
Definitely.
Exactly. I think I agree with exactly what Sam said there. I think Daniel Jones, going into last year, let's not forget there's no revisionist history. People going, he has to perform this year, otherwise the Giants are going to draft a new QB and start all over again. No one rated Daniel Jones until getting into this year. I think how the contract is structures to me makes it slightly more palatable in that after 2 years it's a lot easier to kind of get out of. They can just kind of release him and it's not so much dead cap where it's going to cripple your team. And so I think that the way they've structured it, they've kind of given themselves an out just in case, because I think Daniel Jones did improve, and I think with that new coaching staff over there in the Giants, they've really reinvigorated him and getting Daniel Jones to that next level. I think last year was the signs, and I just hope he's one of those players that they don't play their best ball until they get paid, and then he gets paid and boom, runs away with it, I think. But yeah, hopefully that's it. Luckily, he's keeping Saquon Barkley in town. He's received the franchise tag. He's also keeping Matt Breida in town. He's re-signed with the Giants. He's also going to get a new weapon in Paris Campbell. They've also re-signed Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton to a 1-year deal for Sterling Shepard and a 2-year deal for Slayton. And a big one, Darren Waller, acquired in a trade with the Raiders in exchange for a 2023 third-round pick, 100 overall. This is a big trade.
This is a big trade. This is a trade which I'm very excited about. A healthy Darren Waller, let's not forget. He's third overall in Titan catches with 280. He also has 3,394 receiving yards. The only people he's behind in this league are Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews. So this is a tight end who we know the other defenses are going to have to be scared of. They're going to have to be scared of this option. He's a big option. He's a big threat, big person as well. And as well, I feel like this is a really good trade by the New York Giants. This was the same third-round draft pick that they got for trading Kadarius Toney to the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's pretty much trading Toney for Darren Waller. And I feel like now, New York Giant fans can look at it like that and feel like they've got a really good deal here. I feel like this is a weapon that they've given to Daniel Jones, and hopefully we get to see the partnership between these two grow.
I also think that the Darren Waller trade gives the Giants a lot more variety. Now, if he can stay healthy, I definitely see him as Jones's number one receiver. Obviously, last year, we won't talk about the horrific show that Kenny Golladay put up with the New York Giants, but he was not a number one wide receiver. He was not a number one receiver, full stop. I think Darren Waller, should he stay healthy, is going to provide some variety. Now they're going to be able to throw the ball to a very solid tight tight end. They'll be able to run the ball with one of the best running backs in the league when healthy. So I think there's a big question mark over Darren Waller's health. Obviously, we can't forget that there's always been questions about Saquon Barkley's health. But if both of those can stay quite healthy, I think the Giants are going to have a very solid year, and we'll probably see them in the playoffs again.
Exactly. I think I very much agree with that. I think, they're building this team to be a player. And, let's not forget, I know the Giants have had quite a few bad years, but, they're a story franchise, and they're, belong with Super Bowls and Eli Manning and all of that and beating the Patriots. I think the Giants, they're starting to kind of get back to that in people's heads and go oh no, they're in New York, they're the media capital of the world, they are this big team. And I think that, I really like some of the moves they made on offense and on defense, because of course they signed linebacker Bobby Okereke to a 4-year deal with $40 million and $22 million guaranteed, and they just needed an off-ball linebacker so bad, and Bobby Okereke, one of the best in the league. This is a really good deal.
Yeah, they realised they had a huge hole in their defence, and they've plugged it perfectly, in my opinion. With this season alone, he had 151 tackles. That's his career high, with 99 solo stops, so it means an open play. This guy's effective, you can count on him. And as well, a defense, they're quite poor at stopping the run game in NYC, giving up 5 yards a drive. So I feel like Bobby Okereke coming in, he should be able to just reduce those numbers, because from being able to reduce it from 5 to even 3, that's a whole world of difference on each drive. So I feel like on the defensive front, it could be really helpful for them.
Exactly. I think they're getting that player they need. They needed a linebacker for so long. I think to get that, they're finally addressing these real holes on the roster, and 4-year deal. I think he is gonna. New York fans will love him. Is my guess. And now we're gonna get on to the team that played the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. We're talking some Philadelphia Eagles. They've of course signed Marcus Mariota on a 1-year deal to be a backup. Running back Rashad Penny on a 1-year deal. Boston Scott also re-signed on a 1-year deal. Jason Kelsey, the big one, re-signed on a 1-year $14.25 million deal. They also got Fletcher Cox to re-sign on a 1-year $10 million deal, and Brandon Graham to re-sign on a 1-year $6 million deal. And then the two corners, James Bradbury, they were able to re-sign him 3 years, $38 million with $20 million guaranteed. And then Darius Slay, it looked like he was all but gone. He tweeted out, "Goodbye, Philadelphia." He's going to get his release. That's what everyone's reporting. Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, all the big dogs. And then the Eagles, they're able to flip some assets and keep him in town. 3 years, $42 million, $23 million guaranteed. And, of course, to complete this trio of corners that they have signed, Greedy Williams on a 1-year deal. I really like all of this business for the Eagles. They're keeping, kind of their best players in town. A lot of that core has gone elsewhere. Obviously, they've lost both their coordinators. The defense is going to be turned around. They lost Nick Rallis to the Cardinals, who was a really, 29. He's going to be the youngest coordinator. He's a really up and coming. They wanted him to be their defensive coordinator. So I think that, there's a lot of loss on the defensive side. So to keep Darius Slay, I think that was a big move for them. And it was a really good move by GM Harry Roseman.
I personally think this first week for the Philadelphia Eagles has been really, really unfortunate. Obviously, they've just come off a Super Bowl loss, and they've lost many starting players. Gardner Johnson, a man who I personally really like, obviously ex-Saints player.
Yes.
What personality. I don't know if you guys remember, but against the Bears a few years back, when he pissed off one of the Bears receivers, I believe it was, and the Bears receiver just starts punching him, and Gardner Johnson is completely unfazed.
I do remember that.
It's one of the funniest videos, because he just looks at him like, what the hell are you doing? Not only have they lost Gardner Johnson, they've lost Marcus Epps, TJ Edwards. These 3 are going to be missed. Obviously, they were able to minimize losses. They kept Darius Slay. And I think what a re-signing that is. Darius Slay is a very solid cornerback, in my opinion. Obviously, I don't think they'll do as well as they did last year, but I think Jalen Hurts is a very solid quarterback. He is their quarterback for the future. I still think they're going to dominate this division. I think the NFC East is theirs. Whether they can make it to another Super Bowl is up in the air, but I think these starters that they've lost, they might be able to replace them in the draft in the next few weeks of free agency. But I think overall, this is, besides the re-signing, I think it's been quite poor for them.
I think Black Horse signing is Rashad Penny, the running back.
Yeah.
A few years ago in the league, he was an elite running back. He was at the Seahawks this season. Sadly, that didn't work out, so now he's at the Eagles. This guy, when healthy, manages 6 yards per carry. That's a huge gain on any down in any situation. It can change any situation for a team from a sack point of situation where you're then 2nd and 12. It makes a huge difference. So I feel like an improvement in their backfield in this run game we'll see Philadelphia thrive in the run game a lot more, which will take a lot of pressure off these receivers like AJ Brown.
Yeah.
And I just think that it's becoming a more complete team.
Definitely.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I can see that. I'd also be remiss because I know there will be Philly fans shouting us. So I will mention, like, I've seen people say on Twitter, and I do agree with this, that they drafted Nakobe Dean, who was supposed to be a first-round talent last year. He kind of fell in the draft due to some health things. So they drafted him in the 3rd round, and is he a TJ Edwards replacement? I think some Philadelphia fans would say that he is. I think we need to see more. Haven't really seen essentially redshirted his rookie year, and they've also got a safety, Reed Blankenship, as well, who is kind of the same deal, in that he was a backup, but that had played promising snaps when he was on the field. So I think that they could be. We just don't know. We haven't seen enough of them to kind of make judgments on are they going to be. Because we know what CJ Gardner-Johnson did for the Eagles. We know what TJ Edwards did for the Eagles. They were big players in defense. I think I know what Eagles fans will be saying, but I think we kind of need to wait and see on that. I think I would like to see them address it in free agency still, or in the draft, like you said. And we are moving on to the Washington Commanders. Their big piece of business was signing quarterback Jacoby Brissett to a 1-year deal, $8 million, with $7.5 million of that guaranteed. Signing offensive tackle Andre Wiley from the Kansas City Chiefs to a 3-year deal with $24 million. Obviously, he is going to reunite with offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. Offensive lineman Nick Gates was signed from a division rival Giants, 3 years, $16.5 million. De'Aaron Payne, who received the franchise tag, he then was able to hash out an extension with the Commanders for 4 years, $90 million, with $60 million guaranteed. That is the biggest contract for a defensive tackle in NFL history. And of course, we've got a shout out representing us in the UK, in America, F.A. Obada, coming from the NFL Academy, signed a 1-year deal, $3 million. He's representing as well. Linebacker Cody Barton on a 1-year deal, that's fully guaranteed. Cam Dantzler was claimed off waivers from the Vikings. I remember when Hugo told us that he was released on a night out.
Yeah.
So he's now been claimed. And cornerback Danny Johnson has re-signed on a 2-year deal, $7 million with $2.75 guaranteed. I think let's look at the Jacoby Brissett of it first. Obviously,
definitely.
QB's most important position. I really like the move. Obviously, he obviously started because of the Deshaun Watson situation, 11 games with Cleveland last year, and played really, really well. He was solid, stepped in. I mean, he looked better, arguably, which kind of makes sense because Deshaun Watson hadn't played in 2 years, but he looked better than Deshaun Watson when he was on the field last year. I think the Commanders, they say they're going with Sam Howell, who they drafted in the 5th round last year, and he did look bright. He did look bright for the Commanders in the finale of the regular season that he played. But, is he going to be the star? I think Jacoby Brissett is going to be breathing down his heels, and I think that's a very interesting camp battle to look at.
I don't think you can really look at the Jacoby Brissett deal as a battle for that first starting position for the quarterback. We can't forget that Jacoby Brissett is seen as a good man in the locker room, as a good teammate, and not only that, a mentor. Let's not forget, Washington have Sam Howell, who's only 22 years old. I personally haven't seen much from him, so I can't tell you what his game's like, but Jacoby Brissett can be that mentor for him. And overall, Jacoby Brissett isn't that horrific of a player, He's thrown 48 touchdowns in his career to only 23 picks. If he can limit the turnovers at Washington, they've got quite solid defense. I think they could do quite well. I think this year he's going to be with them. I think he can teach a lot to Sam Howell. And I genuinely think he could be a guy who helps Washington challenge, not the Eagles, but maybe the Giants for that second place in the NFC East.
Absolutely. I really agree with it. And I think, let's look at the other big moves they made. Deron Payne, obviously, he received a franchise tag, but then he signs this big extension. I think I really like this move. You've got to keep him in town because everyone was looking at him. Any team that needed defensive tackle in free agency was like, we need Deron Payne. So to keep him in house, and that Commanders defensive line, I think it's not as kind of ferocious as people thought when it was put together with like Chase Young and Montez Sweat and things, and the injuries have kind of derailed that. But it's still a formidable. He's kind of looking like he's a really great pass rusher, and hopefully Chase Young can stay healthy this year, and that's a nice tandem to have. So I think I really like that. He's probably the second best defensive tackle in the league behind Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
I also do believe that is the best thing for them. You look at his stats; he's been able to play 81 out of the 82 games this season. It means he's able to keep fit. He's had his best year so far. 64 tackles, 18 for loss, 20 quarterback hits. He's getting a lot of pressure on QBs in this league, and I feel like whenever you need a big play, he's there. If you ever need a big play on defense, he's there. And keeping him to bolster this defense and continue will be crucial for them going forward, and especially, as Michael said earlier, with if their defense is fully healthy, I feel like they could really push for and really challenge in this division.
Absolutely, I think that's a really good move. And let's get to these rankings for the NFC East. Personally, I don't think this is going to go down well with the group, but I think the Cowboys have had the best first week.
Really?
I can see that, to be fair, honestly.
I can see out of their trades and what they've done, they've had the best first week. But if we look at squads, we really can't put it past the Philadelphia Eagles. I feel like they did lose a key few defensive pieces, but in the same breath, they are also still a force to be reckoned with. I feel like they still have a very dominant offense with one of the best O-lines in the league. I just don't see how I can not put them at my number one spot.
Okay, I mean, look.
Everyone has different. This is what a podcast is for.
Absolutely, yeah. I can go with that. I can see the points. I think to be honest, again, like the AFC East that we just talked about, this is a really strong free agency class for every team, and I think that there's an argument that every team could be in first place, But for me, it's the Cowboys. For Sam, it's the Eagles. I think both arguments ring true. I think also, I think the Giants. I just think it's the Daniel Jones of it all for why I wouldn't have the Giants as my number one team in terms of how they've done in free agency. Just because I think that's the one, like, for me, I know what Stephon Gilmore brings to the table. I know what Brandon Cooks brings to the table. I know what Tony Pollard brings to the table. There's no risks there. I think that's the only thing. Like, Daniel Jones, it could be a hit, and if we ever record like a looking back, this could age really badly, but could also age really well. So I think that's the only reason why I put them in second personally, but that's the only reason why I don't have them in first. Okay. And I think just kind of like by virtue, the Commanders would be in last, and the Eagles in third. But like again, it's just kind of that the Commanders just like they've just done not as much. So I think and that's kind of what I'd say. Is there any?
No, we're all
okay.
good.
And we are back with the NFC South of the Atlanta Falcons.
Yes.
They have signed quarterback Taylor Heineke to a 2-year deal worth $20 million. Fullback Keith Smith has been re-signed. Tight end Jonnu Smith, who had a complete failure with the New England Patriots, has been acquired in a trade from the Patriots in exchange for a 7th-round pick, which is currently, which will be at 245 overall. They have re-signed Caleb McGarry, offensive tackle, to a 3-year deal with $34 million. The biggest move they've made is re-signing offensive guard Chris Lindstrom, was a Pro Bowler last year, on a 5-year, $105 million deal. Edge Lorenzo Carter, who they got from the Giants last year, is re-signing on a 2-year deal. David Onyemata coming over from the division rival Saints to a 3-year deal, $35 million. And the big one, another big one, Jesse Bates, 4 years, $64 million, including $23 million in year one. I really like this class for the Falcons. I feel like it's a bit different. They've kind of gone about it, but they've kept their top draft pick from 2019, Chris Lindstrom, around. He's a top guard. I'd say one of the best in the league. You've got to keep him. Jesse Bates, a really, really good safety, underrated with the Bengals in my opinion. He's right up there, top 5 safeties in the league. And you get him in, he's kind of going to become the leader in that defense, which is definitely what they need, a bit more kind of leadership, especially in the secondary.
Yeah, I think we're just seeing a lot of the same thing from a lot of teams, a lot of trying to keep key players, trying to keep those healthy guys and keep the players who make the plays on the pitch. It's been, I feel like it's been really obviously it's first week of free agency, so we don't really know about what could come in the future, but I don't see many risks that they've really taken, the Falcons. I feel like they've just bolstered their team in the positions that they wanted to keep solidifying, like keeping Chris Lindstrom is a very big benefit for them, because any team looking for a decent right guard or any offensive guard would have picked him up with swiftness, if that makes sense. So
yeah, absolutely.
Very good start to the free agency for them. Sorry,
absolutely.
Slipped my mind, guys. I apologize.
All good.
Yeah, definitely. I think the Falcons have been, always big free agency spenders, especially now with the two. I personally think the two biggest is obviously Bates and David Onyemata. I think, they've improved that defense massively, not only the secondary but the defensive line. I think obviously with big deals like these, you always have to look at the downsides. I think with Bates, he's been given a massive contract, especially for a safety. He's the fourth highest paid safety ever, and there's the big risk: is he gonna play to that level of money? I mean, like, Bates has always been quite healthy throughout his career. He's played every single game but 3, and I genuinely do think he's going to be a solid addition to that team. I think you're right. He is one of the top safeties in the league. I think Onyemata is a solid addition to their defensive line. Obviously, taking him from the Saints, weakening a divisional rival while strengthening your own team is always a good tactic, I think, I think he's been relatively healthy, just like Bates, He's only played under 15 games in a season once, but could he be that high-level pass rusher? Maybe not. He's got 23 career sacks. From a defensive tackle, quite a decent level, but he's not going to be able to be a threat on the sack every single defensive snap. But, I think those two are really going to strengthen that defense. I think they're the two main guys to look at in the Atlanta Falcons defense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, what you said about Onyemata, I think, he's kind of someone as well, like we said with Daniel Jones, maybe he kind of gets better as they get paid. I think that's kind of what Onyemata is doing. He kind of, people around the league see him as an up-and-coming defensive tackle prospect. And I think for the Falcons to get him in, you're just hoping that promise can kind of show on the field more now and that he can become the player. I also just want to give a quick mention to Taylor Heineke. Obviously he's done well, kind of revived his career literally from the dead. He got called, he was on the couch when he got picked up with the Commanders and nearly beat Tom Brady in that wildcard game. I think that was 2020 when I believe the Buccaneers went on to win the Super Bowl that year. Yeah. So he nearly beat the GOAT in the year he won his final Super Bowl, and now he comes over to his hometown team in Atlanta. I think he's got. Hopefully, I think it'll be challenging Desmond Ridder for that starting job. I don't think he wins it ultimately. I think he's kind of more of a backup. But 2 years, $20 million, it's quite high-end backup money. It's almost like low-tier starter money. So it could be that he comes in and takes the job off Desmond Ridder for that starting job. And I think, I like that move too. I really like Taylor Heineke. I think while you're not paying any QB big money, why not bring in someone like Taylor Heineke to challenge Desmond Ridder for that starting job? Now, let's move on to the Carolina Panthers. Their first move was signing QB Andy Dalton to a 2-year, $11 million, with $8 million guaranteed. Running back Miles Sanders was signed to a 4-year deal, $25.4 million, with $13 million guaranteed. Tight end Hayden Hurst was signed to a 3-year deal, $21.75 million, with $13 guaranteed as well. Bradley Bozeman, their starting centre, has been re-signed on a 3-year deal. Shai Tutel was also signed. 3-year deal there, $20 million with $13.5 guaranteed, and Von Bell is signing with the Panthers. However, the big news, star wide receiver Adam Thielen is signing with the Panthers on a 3-year deal. Now, I really like this move. I think Adam Thielen is a great complementary piece to Justin Jefferson. Number 4 was a pretty good number 1 receiver for the Vikings for many years, and now he comes over to the Panthers. We know the Panthers, they've traded all the way up to number 1 overall. We've seen results. They don't know who they want, but they're definitely taking a quarterback in the draft. Whether it's Anthony Richardson, whether it's Bryce Young, whether it's CJ Stroud, whoever it's going to be, they're going to need a weapon. Adam Thielen is definitely a weapon that's going to help out a rookie QB.
Yeah, definitely. I think, Adam Thielen last season and the season before that, his production did drop, But obviously that's because he was no longer the wide receiver 1 in Minnesota. That was obviously Justin Jefferson, who is, you can't really fault that. Justin Jefferson is arguably the best wide receiver in the league, so Adam Thielen is going to have to take the back seat when it comes to him. But we can't talk about Adam Thielen like he's some washed-up player. He can still, bring that, not energy, because he's obviously about to turn 33, but that experience that I think will be needed. I think he'll actually be a massive benefit to the locker room as well. Someone who's been in the league for 10 years, someone who can help the young players, especially if they do draft a quarterback, which, let's be honest, they will draft a quarterback. Someone like Thielen is really going to help him. Obviously, Miles Sanders, who has just left the Eagles, I think there's nothing but good on this deal. He put up some impressive stats last year. He was key piece to the Eagles' offense last year. He rushed for 1,200 yards, and his rookie season in 2019 showed how much potential this guy has got, and he's really been fulfilling it. But I think the biggest, not the biggest necessarily, the third biggest, I guess, deal is Andy Dalton. I think he's, such a veteran. Obviously, I don't see him as a starter. Obviously, Carolina have the number 1 overall pick, so he's definitely not a starter. He'll be a great backup and a great mentor to whoever they choose to draft.
Absolutely.
I would just like to highlight as well to the Sky Tuttle deal for their nose tackle. That is a $19.5 million deal with $30 million guaranteed. Also taken from the Saints. So another blow for the Saints on the defensive front. So I wonder what the Saints are going to do, but we'll literally come and speak about them a bit later. I feel like as well Panthers are now changing to a new defensive front. They're changing to a 3-4. Most defenses in the league, I think, play 3-4, so I think that maybe this change will benefit them in the run game especially. I like to see who they put around Shy as well. I feel like it'll be an interesting change, and I wonder what their defensive coordinator will do going forward.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, that defense is definitely some of the, it's kind of Carolina's, that's kind of their biggest hurdle. I think some of these offensive signings are really good, but I think apart from the QB at number 1, they kind of want to build this draft. They want to build this defense more through the draft and kind of get in these younger players. Obviously, they selected Derek Brown back in 2019 as that, 2020 as that nose tackle, and Shai Tuttle's going to take that place. I suppose Derek Brown's going to move over to defensive end now, and I think that front's really coming together. Hopefully, you can get a bit more pass rush in there. I think that's something that Carolina probably look at in the day 2, so round 3 or 4. Round 2 or 3, you're looking at getting another pass rusher and someone that can really disrupt this quarterback. But yeah, I think the Panthers, again, they're on a slow upward trajectory. They, of course, hired Frank Reich in the offseason, who had good years with the Colts, obviously did get fired mid-season due to just a multitude of problems there. It wasn't really on him. They just kind of had to make a coaching change for kind of looks more than anything. I think Frank Reich is still an excellent coach, and I like the hire for Carolina. Obviously, he was their first quarterback as an NFL franchise. That's quite nice that he's coming back as their head coach now. And now we're going to move on. Ahmed's favourite part of the podcast, I do believe.
Yep.
The New Orleans Saints. Do you have the moves there? Do you want to run them down?
Right. So there's been a few moves. Obviously, the big one is Derek Carr and Jamal Williams from the Lions. Obviously, there's a few small ones there. I think, first of all, we've got to talk about Jameis Winston. His deal's been reconstructed, so that's given us a bit more cap. We've re-signed Ty Summers, Malcolm Roach, and punter Blake Gilligan. We also got some backups in our defensive tackles. Kalen Saunders, Nathan Shepard. Obviously, we lost Shai Tuttle and David Onyemata as we talked. Yeah, like I said, Jamal Williams, we lost Mark Ingram, so we needed a big, beefy running back to pair up with Alvin Kamara. We also got Storm Norton, Lonnie Johnson Jr., and Ugo Amandi, all three of those to a 1-year deal. And also, possibly Jonathan Abram is planning to sign with the Saints.
I have seen that.
So I'll get started into what I personally believe are the two biggest ones. Derek Carr. So Derek Carr, I genuinely do believe, yes, he's struggled in the Raiders, but he has shown promise. He's put up some decent numbers. And let's be honest, the Saints have really struggled since Drew Brees retired 2 seasons ago. We haven't had a good season then. The Bucks came and took the league the division right under us after Brees had left. But I genuinely think that this is going to make us front runners. But we can't ignore the big money. Saints are a team that have struggled with cap space in the past. We only just got Drew Brees' cap space, his dead cap, off this year. So we're most likely going to need to give Carr a big signing bonus so we can spread out that cap hit over several seasons. I personally think that Derek Carr, Dennis Allen, they have that history together. Sometimes not the most impressive. They went 0-10 together, I'm pretty sure, at one point. But I think, Derek Carr is going to have a really good receiving core and a decent O-line. I think Michael Thomas, he's been injured for some time, but he'll come back, and I personally believe when he's fit, he's the best wide receiver in the league. And again, that is full of bias. But we can't ignore the type of numbers he put up prior to injury. I think we're going to have Jarvis Landry. We're going to have Chris Olave, who I believe was one of the best rookies last year. Secondly, I think the second biggest deal is Jamal Williams. So 3-year deal, $12 million, and with $8 million of that being fully guaranteed. So I think this was a really high priority position for us. Ingram had just left free agency, and obviously we can't talk about the Saints and running backs without talking about Alvin Kamara, who is a great running back, let's not forget. But he's most likely going to be suspended. That footage is quite damning. He beat the hell out of someone. And if that suspension goes through, the Saints are going to struggle a bit. But if it doesn't, I think we're going to probably have the best running back duo in the league. We've always seen that Alvin Kamara's always done well when he's got a big, beefy guy next to him, whether it's Latavius Murray or Mark Ingram. So I think, if Alvin Kamara is suspended, which he most likely will be, I think Jamal Williams is a perfect running back to hold the load just for the time until Alvin Kamara comes back. But let's be real, $8 million guaranteed, not a cheap investment at all, especially when the Saints are always on the edge with our cap space. But, he had a great season last year. He went over 1,000 yards. He led the league in rushing touchdowns. And he either tied or surpassed Barry Sanders' record for the Lions for the most touchdowns in a season.
I believe he surpassed it.
Yeah. So
I think it was 17.
Yeah. So, that production won't be easy to replicate. But if he even does, half of those touchdowns, I think most Saints fans will be quite pleased with that. But obviously, only time will tell whether these two big signings are going to work out.
Absolutely. I think, you've kind of, there you go, we've given it from the fans' point of view. And I think I like some of these deals. I think Jamal Williams as well has just been an excellent player. We've seen him on Hard Knocks with the Lions. We know how much of a kind of locker room guy he is. He's really a glue guy for you. And, you want someone like Jamal Williams on your football team. I think everyone would want Jamal Williams in the NFL. And so I think, that's something that the Saints need. And I think the Michael Thomas deal, I think everyone has just kind of forgotten about him because he's been injured for the past 3 years, really. He's not been able to get on the field. But when he has been going on the field, even if it's a small windows, he still looked like that same player. I think
he hasn't lost it.
Exactly, hopefully. And he's only got, his deal's been reconstructed. It's 1 year's $10 million. That's not at all what he's worth. If he balls out this year, he's going to get a big-time contract. And I think that is going to get him to stay healthy. And, he wants that money overall.
I mean, if we can go back to 2019, Michael Thomas, who won Offensive Player of the Year, I think most Saints fans are going to be very pleased with that, especially if Derek Carr can ball out this year.
Absolutely. I think I like the Derek Carr. I think the only, I think the the thing is, you're tied at the hip. Derek Carr is your franchise QB. There's a no trade clause in that deal.
Yeah.
And with over, with 100 million in total guarantees, there's no cutting him. There's too much dead cap. You and Derek Carr are there. But I think, look, Derek Carr's, we've shown with the Raiders. I think at times he's looked like a proper QB. I think he's even he's in that top 10. Pretty solidified at times with the Raiders. So I think that and he's got weapons. So I think hopefully it should go well. And Jameis Winston is a very serviceable backup as well. Yeah. I think that's probably just in terms of 1 and 2 together, that's probably the best QB room in the NFL, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we're going to be moving on to the final team in the NFC South, which is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Of course, no longer with Tom Brady, and they could possibly have found their Tom Brady replacement in a former number 1 overall pick, Baker Mayfield. Let's get talking.
So they've given him a 1-year deal, which is interesting to me. I thought maybe it's. Would you see this as a prove-it deal or just as just a deal that they've given him because they wanted to bring another guy in while they look at different options? What would you think?
Ooh, I'd say a bit of both, probably. I think, you're looking at someone 8.5 million with 4 million guarantees. It's very much a backup level deal. There's no way that he's making a lot. He's not making starting money, really. He's just maybe really lower than starting money. So I think, they're not looking at him as someone like this star player. They're not looking at him as a former number 1 overall pick that's going to blow the world on fire, which we know what Baker Mayfield is now, and it's probably at the high end, kind of just an average quarterback at this point. So, but I think they're going to give him every chance to succeed. Ultimately, they want someone to replicate what Tom Brady did for them. I think they're not just going to kick him to the walls. I think him and Kyle Trask is going to be a really interesting camp battle, and I think Baker Mayfield has all the tools to be the starter next year. And look, hopefully, he's kind of playing for his starting career in a way. I think if this goes badly, or if he doesn't become the starter, no further team in the future is going to offer him that chance. I think he's just kind of going to be a career backup at that point. I think can Baker Mayfield's ego handle him being a career backup? I don't know.
Yeah. I think the Bucs have really suffered this off season. Obviously, prior to the first week of free agency, Brady announced his retirement, and I feel like I should get on my knees and thank God that he is probably staying retired for good this time. And obviously, they lost Bruce Arians, 2 very important aspects of that team who helped them dominate the NFC South for the past 2-3 years. And if it was those 2 that brought them the Super Bowl to Tampa. So I think, Baker Mayfield at the Browns had shown glimpses of promise, but realistically was never able to maintain it. And I think, here he's just going to struggle. I don't think he's going to live up to the potential. Obviously, I think the Bucs have seen that he's not going to. There's a chance he won't live up to the potential. They've only got him on the 1 year. So I think this is the make or break year for Baker Mayfield's career. If he balls out, I think they're going to re-sign him and he's going to revive his NFL career. But if he doesn't perform like they want him to, I think it's over for Baker Mayfield in the NFL, at least as a starter.
I definitely see that. I think, we'll just highlight a couple of the moves. Chase Edmonds on a 1-year deal. He had a really down year, obviously signed with the Dolphins and then got traded to the Broncos and it just never got run. The Broncos were a dumpster fire. It never got going for him. Obviously, he had some good years of Arizona. I think the one thing with him is health. But if he can come through this year, I think he's a really, really good option in that backfield. They've also signed Greg Gaines, defensive tackle. He's, another good option. Obviously, I've seen him for the Rams. He's obviously playing alongside Aaron Donald. He's gotten so many players. He's gotten so many players paid over the years. I mean, the Dante Fowler deal with the Falcons is one that we all remember. I think just playing alongside him. But, he's going to be playing alongside Vita Vea, who's another really good defensive tackle. So I think he could blossom. Levante David, he's kind of the heartbeat of this defense. And to re-sign him to a 1-year, fully guaranteed $7 million deal, that's something that, he's back. They've got a bit more cohesion. And the big one, people didn't think this was going to be able to happen, but they've rejigged the cap in a way that Jamel Dean, their really promising corner, can re-sign in a 4-year deal. He's kind of becoming that number 1 corner over there. And I really like this move. I think defensively, Tampa Bay have improved and they're trying to keep those key pieces in town. I think just offensively, how much of a dive is it going to take? Even though Tom Brady, he struggled for most of the year last year, it's still, I think, they're going to struggle to even replicate last year's offense, in my opinion. Because Carl Trask, Ahmed fist bumps off camera. Carl Trask, yes, Carl Trask. He's never played a snap in the NFL in a regular season game, and Baker Mayfield
is Baker Mayfield.
So let's quickly wrap up with these rankings then.
I think Saints number 1. I genuinely,
To be fair, I can actually back it.
I saw the Derek Carr's when the Derek Carr news broke, I was heartbroken, if I'm being honest. But, I genuinely think he can shine under this offense, We've got a really good wide receiver room with Michael Thomas, who I believe is expected to come back, not at the start of the season, but a few games in. Chris Olave and Landry. Our O-line is quite solid. And depending on Alvin Kamara's suspension, we're going to have 2 solid running backs who could back him up. So I think a lot of pressure is going to be elevated from Derek Carr. I think Jamal Williams is a solid addition. And I think with the loss of Brady to the Bucs and the Bruce Arians in the Bucs, I think the NFC South has been served on a silver platter for the Saints, and it's up to the Saints to just grab it.
I think I can really see that. And I think, again, it's kind of like the AFC South. These divisions are kind of, keeping them tapped. It's not that strong of a division that I definitely see. I think the Saints have had the best offseason. For me, I put the Falcons in second. I just think the Jesse Bates deal, they really matter. They're really getting that defense going, and the offense as well, keeping that offensive line pieces in place is a big deal to me. And the Carolina Panthers, I think those 3 teams who are really solid, really, really solid moves. And the Buccaneers, I think they've done the best of a bad situation.
Definitely.
They've, it's not a bad free agency class, but I think with who they've lost with Tom Brady and stuff, and there's not, and the cap space and everything, it's just they've done the best they can do. So we are now going to be getting on to the NFC North. And now we are here with the NFC North, and we're going to start with the Chicago Bears. Now they have signed PJ Walker to a 2-year deal. Deonta Foreman is here on a 1-year deal. Travis Homer has signed a 2-year deal. The big one, wide receiver DJ Moore acquired in a trade with the Panthers for that move for the first overall pick. The Bears also received number 9 overall pick, 2023 second round pick, a 61 overall, a 2024 first rounder, and a 2025 second year. Robert Tonyan has also signed a deal with the Bears, as well as offensive guard Nate Davis. Andrew Billings signing a 1-year deal. Tremaine Edmonds signing a 4-year, $72 million deal. And TJ Edwards signing a 3-year, $19.5 million deal. I think let's just kind of talk quickly about this DJ Moore addition. I really like it. I like the whole trade that the Bears made. I think they they didn't fleece the Panthers or anything, but they made the Panthers give up a lot to move to number 1 overall, which is what you want. They got a haul, and DJ Moore is one hell of a receiver.
Yeah, I think the number 1 overall pick this year is reserved for a quarterback, and I don't think the Bears really need a quarterback. I think they stick with Justin Fields. I think he put up some decent numbers last year. I believe he did break Mike Vick's rushing record for a quarterback. He bowled out, but again, I think there's always an issue with quarterbacks rushing, especially someone like Justin Fields. If he takes a big hit or falls on his leg the wrong way, he could be put out of the season for a long time. And I think DJ Moore, that addition, really helps take off some of that pressure off of Justin Fields. It's giving him an extra weapon so he doesn't have to run out of the pocket so much. And I think, with the number 9 overall pick, they can shore up some certain places of their team which need to be improved. And I think, personally, another big addition to this team is Tremaine Edmonds, I think he's a solid linebacker. And let's not forget, the Bears have been a team that traditionally have always had really solid linebackers. And I think Tremaine Edwards, last year, 13 games because he had some injuries. But some of his coach, Buffalo's coach, Sean McDermott, said that it was his best year. So clearly the man has, determination to get back on the field and do well. So I think the Bears, big financial commitment, obviously, $72 million with $50 million guaranteed. But I think he'll be a great addition to their defense.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things about Tremaine Edmonds is that he's still only 24. He will be 25 when the season starts.
Exactly.
But because he was technically drafted when he was 19, even though he would have turned 20 when he played, he's got that kind of weird thing where he's like, he's really young. So when he signs his next deal, he'll still only be 28. And I think, Sam's going to know all about that young linebacker athleticism. And Tremaine Edmonds, he has that in abundance.
Yeah. I think it's a very big signing, and you can see they're preparing for the future of the team. I would personally like to hopefully think going forward in this offseason they look more at building their offensive line. I don't feel like Justin Fields. I guess maybe their offensive line is more focused on a QB run kind of scheme, but I also think he doesn't get as much protection as he needs in the pocket. So hopefully they're able to pick up a few big offensive units in their free agency and just give him more time, because there's no point in them having this signing in DJ Moore if he doesn't even get the chance to have the ball thrown to him. So
absolutely, I think they definitely draft a tackle at number 9.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think that's got to be. I think Paris Johnson Jr., who obviously him and Justin Fields have that Ohio State relationship. I think that's nailed on. There, that would be my prediction for the pick. I'd also just like to quickly mention, of course, TJ Edwards. He was the first deal announced this free agency, so he was the man that kind of popped the cherry on this NFL free agency, and he's hopefully going to make a lovely pairing with Tremaine Edwards. We're now going to move on to the Detroit Lions and some big deals that they have done. Who are David Montgomery signing a 3-year, $18 million deal. They've re-signed Craig Edwards. They've also re-signed John Kaminsky on a 2-year deal with $8.5 million. Cam Sutton comes over from the Steelers, 3 years, $33 million. And they've also re-signed Will Harris. And the big one, safety C.J. Gardner-Johnson signs on a 1-year, $8 million deal, $6.5 million guaranteed. It's a prove-it deal, but surely he's going to prove it for the Lions and get paid next offseason.
Well, definitely, I think Gardner-Johnson it's a win-win situation for the Lions. They needed to improve that secondary, and they went out and did it. I think he'll bring much-needed experience. I think Okudah, obviously cornerback, was drafted quite high a few years back. No one thinks he's really lived up to that draft pick. But I think if anyone can help him, anyone can mentor him, it's Gardner-Johnson. And, this guy, he's quite familiar with the staff at the Lions, and I don't think that's something people should overlook. He did play with us at the Saints, and Dan Campbell, the head coach, and their defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, were both on the Saints staff. So I think he's very solid. I think David Montgomery is a solid replacement for Jamal Williams. Obviously, he wasn't as productive last year as Jamal Williams, but, Jamal Williams statistically was the most productive quarterback with his touchdowns, pretty much. So no one could be as productive as him. So I think David Montgomery is a good addition to that team. And I think overall the Lions have really improved their team, especially where they needed to.
Absolutely. I think David Montgomery is a really good running back, and kind of in a bottle, that's fine. I just think, it is pretty bad and it's pretty damning when Jamal Williams, who seemingly loved the Lions, says that they didn't, that's the same offer that Jamal Williams got. But Jamal Williams said that they didn't offer that, and the offer he felt kind of disrespected by the Lions. So I think that, I think they probably want to move in a different direction. I just think it's interesting. But I really like David Montgomery, and I think he brings a bit more kind of speed to his game than Jamal Williams did.
Definitely.
Which is probably what they want. Now, we're going to get onto the Green Bay Packers, obviously, because of the cap hell they're kind of in, and obviously making sure they don't know what they're going to do with Aaron Rodgers' contract yet when they trade him. They've only actually made 3 signings, which is re-signing Rudy Ford, a safety, on a 1-year deal. They've signed long snapper Matt Orzett to a 3-year deal, and kick returner, punt returner Keyshawn Nixon is back on a 1-year deal with a max value of $6 million. So the Packers, they haven't really done much in terms of free agency talk. We kind of can't really talk about them at all, but I think we'll just quickly talk about what are kind of everyone's expectations. How do you kind of think Jordan Love is going to do filling that Aaron Rodgers void next year? I think let's just kind of mention that quickly.
Well, I think if history is anything to go off of the Green Bay Packers, I think Green Bay can rest easy knowing Jordan Love hopefully will show up. Obviously, he's forcing out a Hall of Famer. Let's not forget that that's how Aaron Rodgers came to be at Green Bay, forcing out Brett Favre. But, history isn't always proven right. Jordan Love, I think, is quite a solid quarterback. I think in the Green Bay team, I think he's got decent amount of weapons. They've got decent O-line. And I personally think, he's a bit more mobile than Aaron Rodgers. And I think mobility is a much-needed skill for quarterback nowadays. So I think it's pretty much all said and done. Aaron Rodgers will be leaving the Green Bay Packers, and probably by the end of this week it will be announced where he's going to go. But I personally think Jordan Love is going to show up. It might take a few games. I doubt he'll show up in the first game and ball out. But I think give him time, give him what he needs, and I think he'll show that, betting on him over Rodgers was worth it.
Yeah. And let's not forget as well, Aaron Rodgers is never ever going to be like a QB who is going to be signed to another 4-year deal. Aaron Rodgers is old. He's not someone you can rely. You can't rely on him because of his age nowadays.
Yeah.
That's, I would say, his only down factor. And let's remember as well, Jordan Love, that's a year of experience from Aaron Rodgers that he would have gained. You don't know what their partnership was like and how much he learned. So I feel like it is very good that they banked on Jordan Love. I feel like Aaron Rodgers going forward, if they had given him a bigger contract, I don't think it would have been a smart idea at all. So I think it's a smart decision.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.